Hey, everybody, welcome to the Mindshift, episode 0.0. This is kind of your introductory episode into the Mindshift podcast. I am John Mays, and with me is Philip Zimmerman. You may or may not have any idea who either of us are. Also, you may be thinking Mindshift podcast. I think there's already a Mindshift podcast. There may be. Erwin McManus, I think you and Philip are friends. If not, we're all brothers in Christ, so don't sue us. Just let us know if you want to lay claim to that name. But let's just introduce ourselves. So Philip, here's what I'm thinking. How about I introduce you? Because just for those of you that don't know us well, like Philip and I actually don't know each other really, really well. Like we've kind of had this partnership together through some mutual work inside of the church, but we get along great. We always talk about really fun things, and it might just be fun for us to introduce each other. Just kind of your take on how you would describe me, and my take on kind of my first thoughts on you. So you want to go first?
Oh, I can go first, but then I'm afraid of what you're going to say. So the best thing about John is his wife. That is for sure, because I had a chance to meet her a few times. So, John, we know each other now for two or 3 years, and at the time you were working for Life Church, really wanting to kind of see how the church can become more missional, and how some of the groups in Life Church can really bring heaven to earth. Into their neighborhood and then into their community. And that's how we got connected, because that's what our ministry has been all about. And I found John to talk to our listeners to be just a beautiful human being. Not just with his gifts, he brings with him some leadership gifts and some vision for what the church should look like. But his heart for ministry, and his heart even more for people and for God. So that's the selfish reason why I'm here. I actually want to have these conversations with you, John, because I just believe in kind of learning and exploring and journeying together. And so that is John. I'm here because of him. So that hopefully says a lot.
Well, that was a lot. That was a lot kinder, and than I anticipated. I thought there'd be a little bit more ribbing. I'm gonna have to rethink mine now.
Where for those who don't see the video, normally his beard is out of proportion, and he has open hair, which he looks like the Californian Jesus. But I wanted to start on a nice note.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I was fully expecting Malibu Jesus, but that's okay. So with Philip, man, I think the first time I even heard about Philip Zimmerman was some colleagues of mine up at the church were like, "Oh my gosh, we just got off this call with this partner," and like the whole time we're testing each other, saying like, "This guy's like the German John. It's the German John," because it was all kingdom theology and this is what we should do, and this is how we could interact, and all of these things. And I was like, I want to meet the German John. And so we got in touch, and I came to understand pretty quick, he's not the German John at all. Like I have kind of what I call like Lego theology, which is just like a little bit of everything, not formally trained, but then like Philip is well studied, well read, like the doctrine and all the things, but you wouldn't know it just by kind of hanging out with him, because he comes with this super like humble sense of like, man, I know a lot of things, I know nothing, all at the same time, which I was like, that is somebody that I definitely can learn from. And so that kind of got us kicked off on all of these conversations about what church can look like here in the US. So Phil, just for context, obviously we're talking about church, we're talking about theology, but this idea of a mind shift, this is something that whether you're like, man, I'm out, I'm not really into the faith thing right now. This is pretty practical across all areas of life, not just your spiritual life, wouldn't you say?
Totally. I really believe that as we journey through life, we are constantly changing. If we're not changing, we are dying. So I feel, and if we're not growing, and part of growth is really changing and wrestling with ideas, with a concept, and somehow, especially in the Christian tradition, in the last years. Especially in the evangelical stream of things, it's kind of a bad rep to change your mind. It's a bad rep to kind of question. But I really think that that our faith at some stage becomes so dry, our life becomes so boring, if we can't really engage in changing, debating, and feeling okay with basically maybe turning ourselves into a new direction. It's like, I love my wife, and if just because somebody has a different opinion of my wife, I'm not starting to lose faith in my wife. I sometimes feel like we are, as Christians especially, are a little bit scared to change our mind, because we believe we are losing the foundation of our faith. Whereby, if our faith is a relationship, and Jesus kind of said, I am the truth. So it's not a concept; it's a person. And so I only because I change my mind about or discover beautiful new things about my wife, that doesn't mean that I'm stop being in love with her. It's going deeper and deeper, and depending on the season of life, it changes and adapts, and that is something to be embraced, for us to embrace, rather than feeling ashamed of, or feeling that we are maybe moving away from the center. It's actually the center we should be moving towards.
Yeah, I love the way that you just kind of explained that, because the thing about changing of one's mind, it's full on positive. Like it's all upside, right? There's not the downside is like having to admit, like, oh gosh, I didn't know something. Like, none of us know everything in any area of our life, and it's the recognition of letting something go. It's even, it's biblical. It's life, death, and resurrection. Out of letting something go, letting something die, something new is born. And so, while it seems scary at times, it's all upside. I love it. So one of the things that we talked about as we were kind of prepping for this, Philip, was um, we really wanted to talk a little bit about, like, how to engage with this content, like what you can expect and then what you can't expect. So obviously, my context, you already brought it up. I came to faith in like a very large evangelical church. Man, had a lot of just great times, great experiences there, grew a ton in my faith. But I'm in this new season where I just felt called to do something outside of kind of that traditional model. So you're not going to hear a lot of, like, oh, well, this is wrong and this is right, or this is bad and this is better. Like, that's something that we're both really passionate about, is that it's actually the both and, like, being able to recognize that served me and my family really, really well for the better part of a decade. And it's serving people really well today. And so what we're offering and what we're talking about isn't something that competes, but it complements the church at large, which already exists. And so that's kind of our context here in the U.S. But Philip, obviously, for those who don't know you have a bit of an accent. I don't know if anyone's ever told you that.
No, no.
No?
It's
Yeah.
the woman said it's nice, so I just keep it up. I can
Oh,
speak
yeah.
perfect English. I can speak perfect English, but yes, I'm from Frankfurt, Germany. I was born in Frankfurt, Germany, and started a ministry here many years ago called Church in Action. And in Germany, we are ministering in a postmodern, post-Christian context, where if you don't engage in conversations where it's where you can actually deal with people in their gray zones of how they understand truth, you will not actually be able to engage anybody. If everything is black and white for you, you immediately will just be a cult, And so for our ministry has been, been shaped by kind of a very incarnational approach, living with people and engaging also in their story, and then almost like a treasure hunt, believing that God is at work in everybody's lives. That's what I believe, that the God's grace is at work at anybody. It doesn't matter how close or how far away you are from God, God is actually at work in your life. And my job becomes then actually to point that out, point that truth out, and speak truth and love and confirmation into what God is already doing in your life. And so we went down. We are the country of the Reformation, where 95 or 99% of all people were Christians, either Lutheran or Catholic, depending on who was in charge at the time. They basically then decided we are now a Catholic city or a Lutheran city after the Reformation. And now it's less than 1% of people who actually on a regular basis go to a church. So we had this whole turnaround. So my whole understanding is that we need a lot of new and different ways and expressions of what it means to follow Jesus in our time. And to say now that I have the right way or I have the only way is I think is just stupid. Number one, and number two, people are so diverse in how they are also opening to engage at different stages in their lives, so that it needs different faith expression. And so there are maybe some churches who can take or reach people on one stage, and then there are other expressions that reach people on different stages. So I totally agree with you in the sense, like, I hope nobody, I always say when I talk about our ministry, what we have done here in Germany, don't just take that and think that it's copied that. It's a beautiful mess. And if you have eyes to see, you will see a mess, and you will see something beautiful spring forth in it. So it's not about a model or just now do it like we've done it or you are doing it.
Yeah, no, I love that.
These are your dogs in the background. I can get the. I think it's applause. That's what I think.
Yeah, it sounds like applause or dog stepping all over the floor. We decided to bring him in so that we wouldn't have to listen to him bark the whole time. So this is just real life, folks. This isn't going to be. We're talking about the messiness of the kingdom, and the messiness includes dogs, right? So one of the things when we were talking about Mindshift and the idea of like the importance of it, we wanted to kind of have something to kind of talk about here on this introductory episode. And so yesterday I jumped up on Instagram and I just asked a quick poll question. It's like, hey, if you had the ability to change something in the world, something about today's world permanently, like just like that, what would it be? And so, Philip, you have not seen any of these answers. And so I wanted to share a few of them and just kind of get your thoughts. So we had homelessness, we had the abuse of children, generational poverty, the idea that individualism is more heroic than community, addiction. Let's see. I don't know what's this podcast rated, because one of these would be PG-13. We had in capitalism somehow, so I'm sure you would have some pretty hot takes on that one. But let's see, some more homelessness. Someone would stop human trafficking. And so one of the things that I noticed is, like, as we're reading through all of these things, like, all of them are good things that we would want to change, right? Nobody is going to disagree with, hey, we should probably address the fact that some people live outside. We should probably address the fact that there are modern day slaves and people are being trafficked. We should definitely address, excessive greed and the impact that can play upon a society. These are all good things and notable things and worthy things to pursue. However, I think it's Albert Einstein said, and I'm going to butcher this quote, but basically, one cannot solve a problem in the same consciousness in which they created that problem, right? I don't know. Are you familiar with that? Albert Einstein, was he German?
Yeah.
Austrian, German. He was
uh,
something.
yeah, he spoke. He definitely spoke German. But yes, I know the quote. But I couldn't tell you if you butchered it in English or not.
Yeah, it sounded good to me. But so I think in all of those things, it brings us to actually somebody actually gave this answer. So I will use it. Sarah said, let me pull it up here. Get people to listen with humility instead of judge others trying to protect God, which was good.
Wow.
But like just that idea of being open-handed with your beliefs, because you and I have had tons of conversations. We talked about fair trade and excessive capitalism, and I had a pretty strong opinion that I thought was pretty well informed. And then you came with this complete counter argument, which blew my mind. Um, and in that, like, I feel like I had a better understanding because I don't live in Germany. Like, all I know is what I know from Oklahoma City right here, and just the people that I read. And so your point of view was really really helpful. And so like bring all this up to say like any of these big things that we want to make a difference in, as far as like building the kingdom, being a part of the kingdom, the things that God is already doing in and around our world, we probably won't be able to participate in as well or as deeply if the first thing we don't learn to change isn't people experiencing homelessness or human trafficking, but actually the ability to change our mind, to freely kind of hold our thoughts and opposing views pretty open handed in an attempt to see things a little bit differently. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that I mean the answers resonate in the human longing for a better world. And I experience this among Germans, and that's where I can connect with Germans on a deeper level. In the sense, even if you don't have a faith background, you know inside of you something is wrong. There's something wrong in us. There's brokenness in us. There's brokenness in our relationships. There's brokenness in our community and in this world. As we are speaking, there are bombs dropping just a few thousand miles from here. I have to kilometers. Your audience will not know
Yeah. We
what that
refuse.
is, but
No metric system
uh,
for us.
no metric system. So there's deep brokenness, and so we all. I mean, there is nobody who holds up a sign pro homelessness. I mean that's stupid. There's nobody who's like, oh yeah, let's have more human trafficking. I mean that doesn't. So we don't need to change our mind there because we, on a deep level, have this yearning, and that's why I'm such a love, being such a in love with the Christian meta narrative, because we know how this ends. We know how God is restoring and putting back together what has been broken. But now, where we do need to change our mind is our approach to it, because our approach, sometimes with very good intentions of, let's say, let's take care of the homeless people. I've worked among homeless and unsheltered in the city of Mainz for a few years when we started. Actually, one of our services that I led, half of the people who were part of the service were either homeless or very poor. So I know the community, not just from books or not just from studies, but from very well, because I've talked and ministered and walked alongside them, and them is already, it's not one community. It's really individual stories, individual lives, individual encounters that sum up. But now to say, oh, I'm against that, and now I have the solution, it's just a little very arrogant, because it's so multifaceted, and to just blame somebody, a system, a law, or an ideology to say this is why we've actually ended up here, and if we would just change that sometimes sounds like, oh, now we're on the right side, but we have done, the path to hell is, it's a German saying, I don't know if you have it in English, the path to hell is full of stones of good intentions. So that's somehow how I'm translating. So with good intentions, we have created a lot of hell in our lives. So sometimes our mind shift has to say, you know what, we maybe can disagree, argue, grow together about how do we approach certain topics. And sometimes the easy answer is not always the best answer. And only because we've fallen in love, that I see that in the US, some people are waking up to say, the gospel is more about just me going to heaven. Yeah, hallelujah. It's about time we are getting this. Now, it's about transforming this world. Yes, this is nothing new. This is the old 2,000, 6,000 years of Christianity and Jewish view of the world. But now don't think like just because one political party or one particular law will claims to get rid of an evil is now going to solve this. That can be misleading.
Yeah, Caesar's going to Caesar. It's not about governments. It's about, not that government doesn't have a place in it, but like the church very much has a role. Like that, the plan A for the restoration of the world is Christ through us, through humanity, not necessarily through legislation, right? So it's the relationships that really change things, and kind of lead to some of this flourishing that we're talking about. So as you're talking through like Mindshift, I think it'd be really helpful if, just for a personal example, we both shared just an idea like, hey, this was a really pivotal moment in my faith, where I had to change my mind a little bit, and how that's played out for us. So
yeah, I can. I can start. So I once did a sermon series. It wasn't a series. I was kind of lazy. So what I did is I wrote on the board 15 topics, theological topics, where I changed my mind, and then the congregation voted on which one I would talk about and answer questions. So there on the board was hell, and it was all the sexuality subjects. So it was really interesting because for like 3 weeks people could vote on the things where I changed my mind when it comes to some of the theological way. So I
hit some real softballs there, didn't you?
Oh, always.
Yeah. Hell and sexuality. Yeah. No, not hot topics at all.
I remember. So it's a long story, maybe for another time. But I did not grow up in the church. I became a Christian when I was around 14 years old. So I don't have any baggage from the church. But I became a Christian. I was on fire for God. And the people I started reading and started listening to were fundamentalists. So I became a fundamentalist because I experienced such a fire. I did not know how to place it. And they gave me a very clear framework on what that means. And so the first few years of me being a Christian, I totally was a fundamentalist, even though I had no idea what that all meant. But because of what I read, I kind of, now as I kind of grew out of that, would say that's where I also can understand people that are coming from a very much black and white worldview, because especially in the teenager years, when you become a Christian, it's also not all bad. It can actually help you to grow into something which we might discuss at another time. But I remember I was in a church board. I was a youth leader with 16. I became a youth leader of a city, inner city church, or a city church in Frankfurt. And I did kind of open youth ministry, where we just kind of more street work, kind of a ministry. And I remember being in the board meeting, and they wanted to vote to give $500. Back in the day it was Deutschmark, to a women's shelter in the city of Frankfurt. And I almost went ballistic because I told them, we need this money for evangelism. Because and I made the case to say, and I laid it all out there, how I learned it in the sermons. Imagine there is somebody who's going to be tortured for all eternity over and over and over and over again. And
love.
There was no love back then. Wouldn't it be much more loving to invest these $500 into your Deutschmark dollars into evangelism? Now somebody who knows me knows that I'm such a believer in actually, bringing heaven to earth into the community. This would have been one of my utmost projects I want to support. But my worldview was actually consistent. I just thought it through. I'm also theological background, a Wesleyan. There's a big fight between Wesleyan and Calvinist, once saved, always saved, or can you lose your salvation? Okay, so we're not going to go into that, but I'm going to give you an example of that. Basically, in our tradition, we ask people to come forward to the altar to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord, but we know a lot of them can actually fall away from that path. And Wesleyans believe, yes, if you don't follow Christ, it's a daily, more daily decision, and not just just because you once are part of the club, now you're always part of the club. Now I'm breaking it down. I know the theologians that are listening are gonna have a problem with this. But I kind of even said, wouldn't it be the more loving thing to do to just shoot people at the altar? Because we know that 80% or something fall back after they became Christians. So let's kill them right at the altar so that they make it to heaven. Wouldn't that be the logical, loving conclusion? Now, I was 17, laying all of this out. But I'm just telling you, I changed my mind, and praise the Lord.
It's like your German... Now, this is the German Shiite law of Philip Zimmerman, basically.
Yeah, I have San Francis San Francis is actually looking at me. I have some people here hanging in my office, and he's not happy right now. He's kind of looking a little grim.
Oh man,
where did you change your mind?
So pretty similar. I didn't grow up in church at all, but I mean I grew up in America, so like. Was real familiar with cultural Christianity, and in fact, that's why I wasn't into church, because I was like, it's a whole lot of lip service and not a lot of action was kind of my thoughts growing up and all through adulthood, really. So I didn't come to faith until like my mid 30s, and so the mind shift I actually had, I experienced really throughout all the time that I wasn't following Jesus or had the language. Because I was like, when I came to faith, I didn't know what I wanted. I knew how miserable and in pain I was, and the mess that I had kind of created and just in my life. And so it was more out of a place of pain. And so as one does, they ask their pastor, what should I do? And their pastor says, you should read your Bible every day. And I'm like, this is a book of fairy tales. I might as well read Brothers Grimm. I don't know, like, how is this going to help me? And it's like, look, just read it and pray that God would reveal God's truth to you before you start reading it. And so as I'm reading through, just like blindly picking out pages, this is kind of what I talk about when I talk about Lego theology. Like anything that didn't fit this experience of what like I thought the world should look like if there is this all powerful, all loving God, and there are all these millions of people that profess faith in this God, the world would look more like this. If the text didn't align with that, I just didn't play with it. Like you talked about the fundamentalism, like my mind shift all growing up was like, I want no part of this. So when it talks about, hey, that you disrespect your father, we're going to drag you outside the city gates and stone you. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like, I know what it means, but it doesn't mean that. There's no way it means that. So I just didn't engage. I didn't, but when I get to, care for the widows and orphans, I was like, that feels pretty straightforward. Okay, cool. Babe, I guess we're gonna foster. So we did that when my dad got sick and died. We took in my mom. So we just did these things that made sense. And then we just started there. So I kind of became almost a fundamentalist the other way, in just the things that kind of aligned with my experiences. And
a selective fundamentalist.
Yeah. And people are like, well, you're just making God in your own image. And it's like, I'm not that loving. Like, if you could crawl around up here and live, like, I'll just give you, there's a neighbor that we haven't always jived with. And I haven't had any contact with him in years, well, in years, in probably a year via text message or phone calls. We're getting along much better now. And our dogs got out this morning, and he was kind enough to let me know that the dogs were out. And I got a text message on my phone, and I'm like, what is that? Because I have his contact saved as, we may have to edit this out, as penis with ears, right? So when you're saying you made God in your own image, people are like, oh, you made God in your own image because you just want to be loving. Like, no, if we made God in my own image, he would be giving us all kind of like phallic nicknames and, speaking poorly. Cause like that's still in me, right? That's this process of things that I'm working out. But that was probably the biggest mind shift for me is like, what,
Mm.
what can the kingdom, I've always been drawn to the kingdom, to what this
Mm.
world could be and the beauty of humanity and the capabilities of mankind. If we can put somebody on the moon, conspiracy theorist, debatable, whatever. But if we can build an iPhone out of dirt, I mean, we can do some pretty remarkable things. So it's just a matter of like, what is it that we're going to decide to do? And how do we participate in this kingdom? There's actually this quote I wanted to share with you, Philip. This guy's pretty brilliant. I like this a lot. It says Christians actually have a long tradition about wrestling with truth and changing and adapting their convictions along the way. It's not a weakness, but a strength to change our minds and keep seeking further revelations. That was Philip Zimmerman. That was you, my friend. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
good.
yeah. You're like, I like that one. I should have let you debate it and told me like, that's
I
garbage.
like it. I tell you, there's a funny story of Mahatma Gandhi. He's also hanging on my wall, so I know always these stories from the. So I have
Like a
a wall
picture,
of
or like
kind
you
of.
got the dude like hanging up there.
Yeah, I went, took a shovel and yeah, that's what I did. Or was he burned in India? So it doesn't matter. But he's there's a picture, there's a picture who is hanging on the wall, and so there's the story that where he was sharing a talk, and a journalist afterwards wanted to talk to him, and he asked him a question, and Gandhi gave an answer, and the journalist looked at him and said, Mr. Gandhi, last week another journalist asked you the same question, and you said something else. And he looked at him and said, yes, I've changed my mind over last week. Because Gandhi was not, and he said that at another point as well, he was not in love with consistency, but with seeking truth. And there's a big difference in and that's what I see also among Christians. We've built our faith doctrine, beliefs, and now we need to be consistent, and our alignment and our faith is actually more to consistency than to seeking truth and being on the journey. And we are actually followers of Christ, talmidims,
Mm-hmm.
disciples of the rabbi, and so it's not so much about just knowing all the right stuff, it's actually following the right person. And we all know a person is evolving. I mean, Jesus even said at the end, he said, there's so much more I want to tell you, but you're not ready, you children. I mean, he said it nicer, but the Holy Spirit will guide you into all truth, because there is more. And we somehow, I'm afraid, sometimes limited, and then kind of want to be more consistent than rather exploring and being on that journey with God
Mm-hmm.
together.
Yeah. That's good. One of the things that like we'll talk, you keep talking about truth, 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 and I don't know if you're familiar. I know you are. It's not like you live in a cave in Germany, but so in the U.S., like we're transitioning now out of what is called Pride Month, and so we've got all of these different months. So February is Black History Month, and so there's part of our culture has been highlighting voices of people groups that have largely either been overlooked or undervalued from a historical perspective. So generally, history is told from the position of the powerful, and so these months exist really to highlight stories and voices. Obviously, things take on a whole other shape, and and then it just becomes about changing your brand to a rainbow or whatever, and marketing and logos. But all these hot topics of people getting super like divisive on social media and cancel culture and all these things. But the thing that comes up more than anything as I'm watching this is we have to be able to speak truth. Like as Christians,
Hmm.
followers of Jesus, it is so imperative, important that we don't let go of the truth. To which I say, like when we think about Mindshift, to which I say 100% yes. Like I'm with you. We do have to be able to speak truth, but to me, when I think about truth, I think about like the true or true, right? Like in the text, there's a lot of things that are true, but there are some fundamental truths that it seems we bypass to get to some other, half truths, maybe truths, partial truths, maybe even full truth, but not like the best truth. So it's like, should one hold the position that, this a homosexual lifestyle would be considered would be sinful? You could share that truth, but kind of the it not having to be this or that. But I would present like, wouldn't a better truth be like you are like the creator of the universe is like wildly in love with you, like loves you, you're included, you're a part. Um, you were never on the outside looking in. You were loved as you are right now, and because you're loved, I love you. Full stop. Period. I don't need to discuss anything. You know what I mean? Like we'll start there, build relationships, care for one another. So that's kind of like how I see like this idea of truth. Like there's some fundamental truths that we tend to bypass sometimes in Christian culture to get to this. I would say an impartial truth, or a potentially, like this is a slippery slope that people are going to definitely comment on probably. But what you bind on earth is bound in heaven. What you loose on earth is loosed in heaven. Like the Spirit gives us as followers of Jesus a lot of freedom in which we get to engage in what we say is correct for our society in certain ways. So how would you respond to that when we're talking about like mind shifts and being able to think through like how changing of our mind or being able to hold two competing ideas in our present culture, particularly here in the U.S. Do you see truths as like almost being tiered truths? Like there are some truths that are just a little bit more, to the point or important than others, or would you push back on that?
Well, that is a matter of great debate in that sense, and for me, engaging in that debate alone is a form of the journey we are called on. So for Jews, I heard it say once that after petition prayer, so asking God stuff, another form of important prayer is actually to argue over the Torah. And so you see Jews arguing over the Torah. And for them, it's a form of prayer. Now, we have sometimes made it, if we argue now about a subject, a hot subject matter, one is right and one is wrong. And that is all of a sudden our approach to truth. Rather than, saying, hey, we are so passionate about trying to find the right way, the most loving way, the most, what you would say, the big path we're on, which most of us would agree on. I think even Christians, it's not this is the problem. I mean, even their theologians disagree, but sometimes we get hung up about these things down here, which we have to discern. So I'm not,
Mm-hmm.
I'm anybody who knows me knows that I'm not wishy-washy. I don't know if that's an English saying, but I can
It
be
is.
very blunt. I'm opinionated. I can speak. I almost have an opinion on everything. One theologian said it better. He said once that 80% of my theology is great, 20% is bad. I just don't know which 20%.
Mm.
Now, as a humble German, I would say 90% of my theology is great. and 10% is bad, but there is still 10%, and it might be the one I'm most passionate about that is bad. And we could turn the same to truth, capital T or small t, doesn't matter, that we need to come with that humility that we have all changed our mind on certain issues. And we have all kind of changed our positions on things, and we need to involve that. So what does Jesus say about all of this? He says it's the fruit that is actually the point of discernment. Does it lead to more love, more beauty, more justice, more things we know God is for, or does it not? That becomes the crucial test, so to speak. That's where we differ from, to go deep here. I don't know how much time we still have, but that's where we differ from like 4 minutes.
Yeah.
That's where we differ a little bit. Postmodernity kind of said, because there are more interpretations of a truth. That means there is no truth. Everything is relevant. And that's one argument of postmodernity. Now, as I have to say that is true. There are more interpretations of, let's say, a Bible verse. But here's where we differ from a postmodern philosopher, or where I differ from a postmodern philosopher. I would not say that each of the interpretations has the same value as the other one. That's where I think postmodernity kind of went off the rail. Yes, there are more interpretations. That's why we need a debate. That's why we need to have a conversation. That's why we need to change our mind, because our desire is to seek truth beyond our interpretation, while testing if what we believe actually leads to more love, more freedom, more joy, more justice. And that is the path of dialogue, debate, and the path, I believe, of Jesus. So that was our 4 minutes. I would have gone much more deeper if you would have given me more time.
Hey, that's good. We got a whole season for us to get into all the Zimmerman isms. So great. So key takeaways, obviously, in this introductory episode, like, this is the importance of changing your mind, like the ability to hold two opposing ideas loosely, yours and somebody else's. It just simply produces more empathy, more understanding, and those are good things. Those are things that actually lead to love. And it's obviously, it's been beneficial in our lives. And I know if you're reflecting now, you can see all the ways in which it's actually been beneficial for you as well. So this is what you can expect kind of throughout the rest of this first season. Philip and I have committed to doing this, I think, for a year. So like bi-weekly, you will hear a lot of us, or you will be like, we didn't like this, and you won't hear any more from us because you're in control. But the key reflection that I want you to think about today is, like, what ideas, what beliefs are you holding right now that maybe you're holding just a little bit too tightly, where you have maybe part of a truth, or maybe an untruth, but it sure feels like truth, that if you were to loosen that grip a little bit, God would be able to reveal even more of God's self to you through your wrestling and understanding of that, how that might benefit you. And then, as the questioning curiosity guy, that'll always be kind of my take, is I'll just leave you with a question to ponder. But Philip is our German, butt kicker, who always has that follow-up action step. And so, Philip, you've actually got some content available online for folks that you can share.
Yes, so you will see this in a lot of answers. We actually look a lot of our theology through the kingdom perspective, that we really believe Jesus summarized his gospel in the kingdom of God. And so if you go to kingdomfirst.com, there's actually a free class you can, if you can take. I give you different pictures on the kingdom of God, the feedback we've gotten that this is very helpful to actually have that as a foundational view on actually understanding what the kingdom of God is all about. So it's kingdomfirstclass.com.
Awesome. So that's a little bit about who we are and where we're going. Hope you enjoyed hanging out with us today. We got another episode right behind this one, so if you're interested, make sure you check that out. Hey, do us a favor. Obviously, we want feedback. So let us know what you like, what you don't like. And at the end of the day, if you found this even remotely helpful or interesting for you, share it with a friend. We would appreciate that. And until next time, peace and love, and whatever you say in German.
Goodbye. Tschüss.
Good. Cheers. Goodbye and cheers. Also, I'm
not cheers. Tschüss.
Tschüss. I don't even.
Tschüss. Tschüss is when you need to go to the restroom.
What you're talking about, having like St. Francis on your wall and Gandhi, and I've got like Ben Harper and the Flaming Lips. One of us, someone's flexing on their holiness just a little bit, Philip. I'm gonna need you to bring that down, okay?